Alright, so in this video today, I'm going to go over certain supplements that we recommend for high school and college athletes, why we use them, why they're effective, and when to use them. So before I actually go into some of the supplements that I recommend for our athletes, I generally recommend that you are training consistently, meaning not missing any days in your training routine for at least 3 to 6 months before you consider supplementation. And what all this means is, once you've gotten a good base of consistent training under your belt, one of two things are going to happen. We know that you're consistent, and now we know that using the supplements will actually have an effect. If you take supplements but you don't train consistently, you're not going to get the result. So you have to have that consistent training with the supplementation. So before you even ask what supplements should I be taking, ask yourself, have I been training consistently? So the first supplement that we usually recommend is a protein powder. From after working with athletes for about 7 years, I have not met many athletes who have hit their regular protein requirements on a day-to-day basis and consistently. And you can argue that if you get your protein in just through the food that you eat, you don't need your protein powder. And I would say that's true. I generally like to use the protein powder as almost like an insurance policy to ensure that you are getting enough protein in to make your workouts more effective. Generally, we recommend the Optimum Nutrition brand. That's just a brand that we've used in the past, and it tends to work pretty well with our athletes. There's plenty of other good brands out there, but that's generally the brand that we like to use and we like to recommend. So I generally like them to take their protein powder immediately after their workouts, or if they're not working out that day, I still usually recommend that they take their protein powder in the form of a shake, usually the second or third meal, so either before lunch or after lunch, almost to act as if it was a second meal. And this is a real easy way to sneak 20 to 30 grams of protein into their diet, so they're getting at a higher level of protein intake on a daily basis, and that generally helps to build more muscle mass. So the second supplement that we generally recommend are BCAAs, which are branched-chain amino acids. These are essentially building blocks of protein. One can argue that if you do get enough protein in the day, you don't need your BCAAs because you're essentially meeting your protein requirements. Kind of for the same reason why we recommend protein powder, we also recommend BCAAs in conjunction with that, and it almost acts like an insurance policy. So this is just ensuring that we're not losing any muscle where if we don't hit our protein requirements in the day, it's not as much of a big deal if we're using BCAAs. Now, from a personal standpoint, what I notice consistently with athletes who take this is they perform better when they're in the gym, they recover faster, and they tend to just put on a little more muscle mass, and it just helps overall with also when you go through periods of time where you may not be eating that much. So if you're somebody who has to have a small breakfast and you're going to go work out afterwards, drinking BCAAs with that going into your workout and intra-workout and even after workout is a great way to make sure that you don't fatigue too much. You keep your endurance up throughout the workout. So I generally like to recommend this, and it really is almost as an insurance policy to make sure that you're getting the amino acid profile, the protein that you need in your day. Now, another thing that BCAAs do in your workout, if you're drinking them before, during, and after, kind of just sipping on that throughout, it actually helps with increased protein synthesis. So what this is actually going to do is allow you to absorb your protein and get it to your muscles a little faster, and that kind of creates like about an hour to 2 hour window in which you can increase protein synthesis. So the third supplement that we generally recommend is magnesium. Now, magnesium is is a mineral that actually most people are deficient in, and I would say especially high school and college athletes, based on their diet and based on their eating habits. most of them are probably going to be deficient in magnesium. I generally like to recommend magnesium glycinate or magnesium threonase before bed, or you can have it throughout the day. Now this is going to help with sleep, which is really going to greatly improve recovery, but magnesium plays a really vital role in muscle contraction. So if you are deficient in magnesium and you take it, if you're deficient in magnesium, you are leaving some performance on the table. So it's almost like an insurance policy, but you're probably going to be deficient in magnesium. So it's a really good supplement to take just in case. So then the fourth supplement that we usually recommend is vitamin D. Now, similar to magnesium, vitamin D is a vitamin that most people are also deficient in. So it's a really good idea to just supplement this on a daily basis, especially during the times of the year in which there may not be as much sunshine and you might not be getting as much exposure to the sun. Especially coming from a gym in Syracuse, this happens very frequently. So I generally like to recommend about 2,000 IUs a day. If you want to get more effective with this, you can even get your blood tested and see what your vitamin D levels are at. But this helps, again, with muscle contraction, and it helps with hormone production. So if you are deficient in this, you are leaving some performance on the table. So you really want to make sure that you're getting your vitamin D in on a daily basis. Short term, you might not feel much of a difference, but long term, it will make a huge difference. The fifth supplement I generally recommend is fish oil. Now, fish oil is a great anti-inflammatory fat, so it's an omega-3 fat. Now, if you look at the standard American diet, kind of how a lot of these high school athletes are eating, they tend to get more omega-6 fats in that are a little bit more inflammatory. So we want to try to counteract this with some more anti-inflammatory fats. This is, in general, is going to help with overall recovery, brain health, and even joint health. So this is a big one here. When you're looking at your fish oil supplements, there's a couple of things that you might want to think about and look at. We generally recommend Nordic Naturals, but if you look at the breakup or how it's made up, you want to see that EPA and DHA are most of the omega-3 fats in there. If it's a very low amount, then that's probably a low quality fish oil. And the second thing you want to think about is how you're storing your fish oil. Now, it is a fat, and if you leave it in the cupboard, it can kind of go bad. And that's why I usually hear people saying, oh, I don't want to take fish oil, it tastes bad. Put it in your refrigerator and just take it on a daily basis. I generally recommend about 2,000 milligrams, maybe more. I like to experiment with it, but 2,000 milligrams is a great place to start. And just make sure you're getting that EPA and DHA as most of the omega-3. So the sixth supplement that we generally recommend is creatine. Now, creatine tends to be a pretty controversial topic, especially coming from parents when parents are asking me about whether or not their kids should be taking creatine. And I like to preface this with this. Creatine does not have any negative side effects. You're really not going to see anything negative happen from creatine supplementation, and you're not going to see anything negative when you stop taking it. Creatine works. It's been the most researched supplement around, and time again it's been shown to work. You really can't go wrong with taking creatine. The only thing I generally recommend, I said initially in the beginning of the video, be consistent for 3 to 6 months of training. Try to make it 6 months or more before you start to consider creatine. And be a little bit older, because you probably have a lot more time and progress you can make before you even throw creatine in. So I like to kind of save this for a time in which we really want to peak performance. Essentially what creatine does is it builds up creatine phosphate storages in your muscle, and it allows you to create more energy faster. Now the first energy system in which you start using in order to produce force is the creatine phosphate system. So once you are creating powerful force, especially in a duration in which it's 10 seconds or less, you're really going to lean on that creatine phosphate system. So this is a great way to build up those storages so you can actually produce more force, especially when you're in the weight room. So if you're in the weight room and you're able to produce more force and perform better, what's going to happen is you're going to build more strength naturally, and you're going to build more muscle mass naturally. And once you do decide, okay, I'm going to step away from creatine for a little bit, you're going to have this increased strength and power that's left over. So generally, this is a good supplement to take if you really want to just get a boost in your strength, a boost in your power. I really recommend it for athletes who are playing a very much power-based sport like baseball or football, but even all sports across the board. You're gonna benefit from being able to produce more force. So creatine is a great supplement. We generally recommend Optimum Nutrition as a brand to use for their creatine monohydrate. The last one here is just a multivitamin and a super green powder supplement. To me, this is kind of optional, but I do look at this as an insurance policy here. If you're a high school athlete or a college athlete, chances are you're not getting enough vegetables in your diet. I have not had an athlete in which I thought they were eating enough vegetables from a day-to-day basis. This is generally a really tough thing for high school athletes to do. So this is a great way to say, hey, I'm going to take this multivitamin, I'm going to take this super green, especially if I'm not eating enough vegetables and I know it. Let me just take this as an insurance policy to make sure I'm getting the vitamins and minerals that I should be getting in on a day-to-day basis. If you have a perfect diet, you probably don't need these, but to me this is just an insurance policy to make sure you're getting enough in, and this is just going to make sure everything in your body's operating optimally, everything's doing what it's supposed to be doing. So generally this is a good supplement to take. You're probably not going to see anything drastic initially, but just for general health, this is going to be a really good thing to take, and there's going to be no negative side effects.